There we go.
There
It
we
is started.
go. Finally.
Finally, let's wait for everyone to join.
And make sure you edit out my scream to Polly. Sorry. I was a little excited. We are good to go.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dipali, and I lead the allyship pillar at Women in Streaming Media. We have a lots of exciting content today, and today's call is packed with a lot of updates from IBC and exciting news. So first, let me give you a quick introduction to Women in Streaming Media Network, our allyship program, especially for our new members. We got really a lot of new members joined us during the IBC. And next, I will introduce you to Ally of the Month, and following that, we will engage on AMA session with our Ally of the Month. We have some curated questions, but feel free to ask anything in chat window during the call. And finally, we'll conclude the call by sharing our upcoming details, event details, how to stay connected with us. We want to make sure that today's call is a meaningful and inspiring experience for everyone involved. So let's get started. We are always getting new members, and as I said, let me first quickly introduce you to Women in Streaming Media Network. As a global networking organization, our mission is to increase diversity and give more visibility to women leaders within streaming media industry. Our membership is free, offers the opportunity to connect with supportive community of women across all the areas of streaming media and connected industries. Our speaking engagement team is actively supporting participation at the industry panels, and their goal is to have at least 40% diversity on the panels we participate in. We have an award-winning mentorship program which empowers women in streaming media industry by connecting them with experienced leaders. And this year is our seventh cohort. We launched the allyship program in 2024, and it's all about making the real impact by understanding the privilege, by raising the awareness, and practicing allyship. I have a lot of things to talk about the allyship program, but knowing that time and we had a small technical glitch, I will directly jump into introducing our Ally of the Month. Diversity on screen starts behind the scene. I read this one line and I realized the importance of having this conversation with an organization who is excelling, nailing that. Today, we have a leader from 5E Video, company dedicated to find the people who make the entertainment a force for good in the world. This company is known for building and scaling the team in cut-edging video technology, creating solutions that enrich the lives of consumers globally and shaping the future of video, how content is accessed. Interestingly, the name 5V Video, and this organization is guided by five core values: inclusion, sustainable, authentic, attentive, and considerate. We have a Josh Seeley, Associate Director at 5V Video. Josh is working with some of the biggest names in the OTT and streaming media space to help them to find the and build the technical teams. As a part of only B Corp certified recruitment company in the video technology space, Josh focus on making connections that are not just delivering the results, but also aligning with the company values that matters. He's also co-founder of Media and Entertainment Mixer, bringing the people from across the industry together to share the ideas, swap the stories, and spark the collaborations. Josh also champions the initiatives such as Playback Pioneer Report podcast and Women Behind the Screen report, the projects that shine a light on innovative, celebrate people doing incredible work, and push for more inclusive industry. Welcome, Josh. We are excited to hear from you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. It's very good to be here, and thank you for having me involved in the allyship. Obviously, Dipali, we've known each other from the mixer for a bit of time now, when we first discussed this, and great to finally be here.
Absolutely. So we'd love to know from you. Okay, we'd love to know from you, like, how was the IBC? What has it trained? And anything you want to share with women in streaming media after the IBC?
Yeah, definitely. Can you guys all see the screen? Yeah, a screen on the. You see the PowerPoint on the screen? Is that
Not yet.
shared? Okay. Share. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Awesome. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here. It's great to be involved in this. Obviously, we've been in conversation with this for a bit of time now, and it's great to be here today, I guess, sharing some of the thoughts, feelings, and kind of observations from the time at IBC. Obviously, Dipali introduced me very well, but obviously, hello, my name is Josh. I'm an associate director here at 5V Video. And I'm here to, I guess, give some insights on recruitment trends, but most importantly, I guess, what allyship means to me and why it matters to our industry. So I lead 5V Video. 5V Video, as Dipali mentioned, essentially is a global talent brand that is focused within the OTT and video technology sectors. As Dipali also referenced, we are the only B Corp certified recruitment provider within the video industry. Now, what that means is that we've gone through a rigorous, thorough process to meet the highest level of accountability in social and environmental impact. As Dipali mentioned, we don't just aim to fill roles. We aim to align our customers' needs alongside from a technical perspective in terms of what the individual may need, but also the people behind those CVs is super important to us in the work that we do here. Now, outside of that, also as mentioned, run the Media and Entertainment Mixer, Women Behind the Screen report, and the Playback Pioneers report and podcast. And my role essentially is building high-performing technical teams while making sure inclusion sits truly at the heart of everything that we do. It's where it all began. On the screen, you'll see some pictures of me as a young guy. But I guess really my leadership journey began in July 2023. Because that was when I took over the reins of 5V Video. My roots in leadership maybe go back a bit further than that. As you can see, some of pictures of me before I could even say the word recruitment. I captained sports teams from the age of 6 across football, tennis, cricket, the kind of lot. And that was from age 6 up to 18. I always was the captain. It was always my role, and it was something that I guess shaped me in terms of my leadership style today when working with 5V Video. Sport, and I guess my captain and leadership roles within sport taught me resilience, taught me teamwork, and most importantly, the kind of weighting which culture has within a business unit, a department, or a team with a shared goal. In my view and the way I see it, what I've learned is culture only works when diversity is at the core. But more on that a little bit later. On a lighter note, I guess a few fun facts about me. I was a county tennis champion when I was 14, which I'm still hanging on to now, some years later. And I was definitely that person who would have gone pro in football if it wasn't for the knee injury, which everyone likes to remind me. With this weekend, there's a big sporting event within golf, which is the Ryder Cup. And back in 2012, I actually helped when the Ryder Cup was in Newport. I'm in Bristol, UK, so Newport's just over the bridge in Wales. And back in 2012, when the Ryder Cup was hosted there, I famously helped Rory McIlroy push his buggy up a muddy hill, which if I wasn't there to help with that, he would have actually been suspended from play due to the time it was taken. On the same day as well, and my biggest claim to fame is that when Tiger Woods walked past me, shaked my hand. So it was not a bad day's work overall. So why am I here on this call? I guess, most importantly, and, why I really wanted to be involved in this is that, being an ally for me is deeply personal. I'm a son to my mum. I'm a brother to my sister, I'm a partner to my girlfriend, and I'm a friend to the numerous colleagues and friends that I have within this community. And when I think about the people closest in my life, I don't want to be part of an industry that isn't advocating for them, simply. My goal is to create a safe space where they can thrive. And that is extremely important to me within the work that I'm doing at the moment at 5V Video. From conversations, with female friends, loved ones, and colleagues, my eyes have very much opened, hearing their stories and just being a part of an industry where, if we're being honest, most people look and sound like me. Most people look and sound the same. So in my role, I'm thinking, how can I be part of the solution, not the problem? Now, for me, that means listening first. It means amplifying voices, but most importantly, creating safe spaces and making sure diversity drives culture. Inclusion isn't abstract. It's about the people in our lives and the responsibility we all carry on a day-to-day basis to make workplaces better. So here are some of the hard truths. Women make up only about 21% of technical teams. Fewer than 5% are in leadership roles, and around a third are considering leaving our industry altogether. Only 27% of young women even choose tech as a career path now. Now, this isn't about pointing fingers, but as someone who builds technical teams every day, I see the responsibility, and I have to make sure I'm not part of the problem. Allyship is how I make sure and take great pride in making sure that I am part of that solution. So to go on to some of the IBC reflections. Now, I landed back at IBC last Wednesday night, just sort of kind of getting back to normality. It was a great weekend. It was great to see everybody there in full force, and that was my it was my 4th year in running of the show, which was great, and it was great to be out there in full force with some of the 5V Media members. Georgia, who's on this call as well. This year overall for me felt more quiet overall. I guess there were pockets of busyness on certain stands, pockets of very emptiness on some stands as well. But overall, the floor did feel more quiet. Now, what I would say in contrast to that is that the quality in terms of the conversations were much more positive. From a recruitment perspective, more people than ever are hiring at an IBC. We walked away with more live vacancies that our customers are looking for in an IBC period than we have ever had before in our company's history, which is a good sign that actually the quality of conversations, the mood of the camp in terms of people at IBC and how companies are feeling at the moment and the state that the businesses and the industry is in right now is moving in a positive direction. I was there 12 months ago. It felt very, very different to this year in terms of new recruitment requests and people looking to add talent to their businesses. A couple of standout sessions for me across the weekend. Now, these two businesses very much fit into a lot of some of the work that we do within 5V Video. Now, Bradmax are a video player commercial company. Now, video player and video playback has always been quite an important part of my work, and it's quite a congested field, actually, at the moment. Bradmax stood out to me because when I look at IBC, I look for what's different, what's new, and what actually is tangibly real, right? Because, we've all heard the buzzwords at these shows, but what actually is truly different and actually going to make a difference? Now, Bradmax operate a single code-based player across devices, which within the video player industry is a new kind of rarity, a new entity within that, and something that is, I guess, challenging the norm. It was their first time presenting. It was their first time with a kind of booth at the show. And it was great to see a kind of new name within an old school congested part of the industry make a few kind of spotlights and kind of turn a few heads along the way. Again, with kind of sticking towards the theme of people doing different, and this is something I expect to see in many, many booths in years to come, was FX Digital's work. Now, FX and Matt Dewig, who runs that business, is a good friend of our business, and we've known him for a long time, but they actually had a Apple Vision Pro VR setup. Now, the big thing that FX Digital are pushing at the moment is their connected TV QA lab and the work they're doing within testing. Now, they actually had an Apple Vision Pro that you put on and it took you to their lab in London to look around in person, right? It was one of the busiest stands I saw all weekend for that reason. Mainly, probably because some people wanted to see the test lab, probably because some people wanted to have a go on the Apple Visual Pro for the first time, right? But either way, it drummed interest. It was something different. And I think that is super important for me when looking at what people are doing at IBC. Representation. Now, there were positives. I, in general, felt a younger audience there than previous years before, which is great to see because, you know, I guess some of the challenges that we'll talk about in the coming slides is around bottom up within bringing new people into the industry at the moment. Now, that was very encouraging. There were also more job seekers there, which was great to see. And a good year for them to go, given what I just said with lots of companies hiring at the moment. But more than previous years, people were really taking the kind of hit to go, do you know what? I'm going to go there off my own back and I'm going to try and see if I could make something happen in terms of getting a job for myself, which was great to see. And it's great networking, which is, again, another theme that I'll come on to shortly. If we look around the representation of women within the room, I guess let's be really honest about it. It's still lacking where we would want it to be. Now, I actually feel from my experience within the recruitment sector and, you know, watching and knowing people moving and taking new roles at companies, etc., the commercial side, I guess, of our industry does feel as though the balance obviously isn't perfect, but the balance is much more represented than on the technical side of things. Now, I appreciate not all technical teams go to IBC, but there were lots of technical people there. And within that, I felt a massive gap within the representation of women within that still. And that brings us on, I guess, to the uncomfortable truth that I wanted to bring up with everybody today. There is good work taking place, but that good work is being diluted by poor behavior still in abundance in environments like IBC. Now, I traveled with female colleagues to the show, and to be frank, when they come up to me at the end of the day, obviously 5V Media have different schedules to 5V Video, and when we come back together at the end of the day, to be frank, I was quite taken back when they told me some of the comments they had been exposed to over the week. We need to be creating a safe space for women to thrive in this industry. We can celebrate the progress we've made, but if we aren't able to acknowledge the gaps in which we still need to fix, and most importantly, call out bad behavior when we see it, it's simply not going to improve at the rate that we need it to. One thing that gave me hope at IBC was the role of communities. Women in streaming media always showed up in force with panels, meetups, safe spaces for conversation. And that's what communities do. Most importantly for me is they create belonging in what otherwise can feel like an IBC big jungle amongst us. These communities are going to be absolutely vital to shaping change within the industry and increasing, I guess, the representation, but more so the environment that we create at shows like IBC in years to come. Now, I don't want to stand and preach to everybody like D&I is completely nailed and perfect at 5V Video, right? Because like everybody else, we're on a journey with this. We find it a challenge like a lot within the industry. But what we have got right is that we are accountable and we recognize when things need to get better. Now, some of the things that we've taken on board, which was one of the best things we've done in the business over the past few years, was we conducted an external culture review around D&I within the business. Now, this is super important because when we're in our day-to-day job, when we're doing the kind of work in job titles and responsibilities that we're expected to do, we're within the action. We have tinted glasses on and we can't necessarily see the problems that are maybe at a very infant stage developing amongst us within the business and the culture that we are creating within the business. Now, for me, it's super important that this is external because this is a fresh pair of eyes looking at a bird's eye view, giving a different perspective, and ultimately, as it did for us, producing very different answers, results, and recommendations than we ever would have come up with. For us, it was a complete necessity that we did this exercise, and off the back of it, we have improved substantially in the 18 months since we did that external culture review. Now, within inclusion, for me, it starts, and I guess why I'm here today is that it starts within the first interaction that you have within a company. Now, that is always within the recruitment process. If trust isn't built, oh, sorry, I flipped the slide there. Oh, sorry. If that first interaction with a recruitment team, with a hiring manager, whoever it may be, if that trust isn't built there, then that ultimately sets the precedent for not feeling like somebody belongs later when they're working within the business, when they're 6 or 12 months down the line. So it's super important that that trust, that belonging is recognized within the first interactions that you ever have with somebody who may join your business. Now, 5V Video's impact, I guess, again, is referenced in the introduction. We've obviously got some great initiatives on the go at the moment. Now, Georgia and the team at 5V Media, who is also involved in some of the other kind of communities in the sector, such as Rise, has really been behind a lot of the action alongside myself with some of the reports such as Women Behind the Screen, where we aim to showcase women within our sector who are truly doing fantastic things behind the scene. And most importantly, and why we do this, are not getting the recognition that they deserve for doing so. Now, obviously, we work with partners such as Women Streaming Media. Obviously, I've referenced some work done with Rise as well. But I guess the stat and what's on the screen right now, which makes me the most proud, is the first bullet point. 2025 is the most women we have placed into technical roles in 5V Video's history already. We're in September. We've got 3 months to go. And I look forward to setting a new benchmark in terms of a target that we will be trying to beat for years to follow. But that was something that we are super proud at within 5V Video. Now, also reference was our events. And with our events, we make it a massive aim, goal, and mission statement of ours to showcase diverse talent. Now, Dipali, thankfully, joined one of our panels in the past. And we actually set a rule after our first mixer where we have a saying, which is no panels full of men, right? Because it's super important that different voices are being showcased at our mixer, because ultimately different voices allow for different innovation. And that's how we are going to propel our industry forward. Now, looking at the year ahead in terms of some recruitment trends and what I'm seeing on the market, for me, the current state of the recruitment market and how it will be in the next 3, 5, 10 years, it's all about hybrid skill sets, technical expertise plus communication. Now, what I mean by that is that we don't know how fast it's going to be, but we all know at some point AI is going to come into play. And I'm sorry for bringing up AI again, because I imagine everyone would have heard about it for a week nonstop at IBC. But the reality of it is that AI at some point is going to automate a lot of admin, is going to automate a lot of operations, and is also going to automate a lot of the technical aspects that go into day-to-day jobs of individuals. This means that communicating, networking, is now becoming the #1 differentiator, the #1 skill set my clients and customers ask for me, no matter what role it may be, is a good communicator and a good people's people. Someone who's able to network, who's able to communicate effectively, because we all know it's going to come at some point in terms of the automation around AI. So we need to prepare ourselves in the way that we are upskilling ourselves around the areas within networking and in communication. Now, that skill itself of communication, of looking to get better within networking environments, speak to people, speak to partners, etc. Now, this truly will become your superpower over the next 3 to 5 years, because ultimately being able to communicate effectively and being able to kind of put yourself out there is what will get you in the networking groups. Being in the networking groups is what is going to get you the interviews. Being effectively communicating in the interviews will get you the job, and then that will keep you the job subsequently for the years to follow. So I truly believe the essence of networking and communication and people skills right now is the #1 superpower and requested skill within the industry. Now, diversity for me and for 5V Video isn't a nice to have. It's a must. If we rely on the same voices, we'll keep getting the same answers. We've all watched our industry translate from broadcast to OTT over the last 10 years. And now we've got this thing of AI in the middle as well that's going to mess everything up or make everything great. No one's quite sure yet. But given the chaotic, I guess, nature of which the industry that we sit within right now, fresh perspectives are needed now more than ever. Diversity fuels innovation, and without it, our industry simply just cannot move forward. Some closing thoughts. So for me, community creates belonging. If we want our industry to be a global flagship for diversity, then representation needs to be on every stage, in every room. As someone building teams, I know I have to be part of the solution. Allyship, inclusion, and representation are how we challenge the status quo and how we challenge and how we take streaming forward. Thank you for listening to me, everybody. And thank you very much, obviously, for the time and having me today. Obviously, we'll move on to questions in a second. But if anyone wants to connect with me, if anybody wants any advice, if anybody wants to soundboard anything, please do take me up on the offer and connect with me on LinkedIn or drop me an email. It'd be great to obviously be more connected with more kind of allies and members within this community and kind of help in any way I can.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing these, updates from the IBC, Josh. And starting with you, I think you have already answered the first question, which I always love to ask the leaders is what allyship mean to you? You already answered that. And looking at the data, I think there's a lot of work is required on the diversity side. And it's no longer good to have, it's a must have, as you rightly said. So looking at your inspiring journey in the streaming media, was there any moment in your career when you realized that the power of your voice or platform is extremely important to uplift others?
Great question. I think IBC 2024 was maybe the first time at which I felt like that, right? Because that was probably the first time where customers really leaned on me, asked my opinions, recommendations, and processes around bringing more better culture around D&I within their businesses. That was the first time really, as I said, that would have been my third IBC. That was the first time really that customers were coming up to me and asking me along these types of questions. So I guess that was probably the first point in which I felt that way.
Excellent. Like during this IBC, one of the word got my attention. Most of the conversation, it was used as collaboration. So how do you see like partnerships like Women in Streaming Media can help to amplify the voices and drive the meaningful change within the streaming media space?
For me, it's around access to talent that people may not have seen otherwise, right? I think that's the super most important bit for me on this topic, because once you're in the room with women in streaming media, and I know what it's like, right? You're talking to everybody, you're networking with everybody, you're communicating with everybody. So that person who maybe wasn't part of that community would, maybe sit behind their LinkedIn and look at a business and think, I'd love to be involved in that, right? But they're behind LinkedIn. And as I mentioned, women in streaming media and communities like that, they bring belonging and they bring a safe space where you're able to give a call, come on a Zoom meeting like today, or walk up in one of the events and have a conversation and feel safe in order to do that, which is the most important bit for me. So I would say that from tying it in with what I do within recruitment, I think the kind of real machine behind it can be the actual access to talent that maybe those companies would not have had otherwise if they were not involved with these types of communities.
Yeah, I think, you said it very well because I started feeling like belonging and the essential part of the community when I met with, Women in Streaming Media first time in 2023. And since then, every event I feel like, oh my God, I have to go there. I belong here. And I feel more confident about going and, presenting myself into those events. I think Janine has a question. Janine, please go ahead.
Thanks. Just looking for the mute button. Thanks, to Polly, and thanks for the great conversation too, Josh. So I have a question around, I know you've made some really great points around recruiting. what do you think is what are your best practices for attracting talent, diverse talent? And what do you think, is the biggest challenge to, even women just applying for a role in an organization or in an industry that is very much male dominated? Just curious.
It's a really, really good question. And I guess, along with some of the topics today, it does seem as though women will have to do more to amplify their voice to be in the same room. And this is part of the problem that we have right now, right? So I guess in terms of some of the best practices that we do, it's important for us that we cover all bases. So as you can imagine, within a recruitment business that's worked within the video technology sector for 10, 15 years, there's a lot of people off the book that we know. But what's important for us, and a change actually that I made within the business 2 years ago, was that we don't go to the same types of people and faces that we've known for 10 to 15 years, right? Even if from a selfish perspective, and our job is to fulfill a position, right? So even if it would be easier for us to go and call our black book of 20 people who we've known for 10, 15 years, something I have changed within the team over the past 2 years is that we do not submit profiles for roles until we have covered all bases. Now, by that means our network, people that we know, the same faces, I guess you can say, right? But we don't start presenting people for a position until we've then covered elements outside of this. So until we've fully scanned LinkedIn for every single relevant candidate, until we've posted a job advert everywhere and reviewed 1,000 applicants literally and gone through them one by one, right? Because if we just keep talking to the same types of people all the time, we're going to end up placing the same types of people, and then we're part of the problem. So I guess, and again, it's quite challenging to do with it and make that call within a business and say, actually, do you know what? Maybe I'm not going to do the easy thing. Maybe I'm going to do something that's going to take a bit more time, but it's actually going to help do something good for our industry in the long run. So that's around kind of 5V video as itself. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And as somebody that hires in the industry, I think one of the biggest challenges is, balancing being, fair in the marketplace and also being able to, recruit the diverse talent that we so badly need to, balance the scale. So that's a really great answer. So thanks for that. And I just something that kind of struck me when you were giving some of the context around IBC. I found that IBC, I mean, it's a very different perspective, but this is my third IBC, and it's a community that I, traditionally have felt like an outsider in, and this is tech conferences in general. But I think this year, being invited as a speaker, thanks to the Women in Streaming Media, where I was able to do a panel, just walking around with that speaker badge, I felt like a superhero. I felt like I was approached differently. I was spoke to differently. There was a different level of respect that came with this badge. So it was very much a very different perspective. And just from an overall perspective too, I thought that this was our busiest IBC, and it might just be because of, you mentioned Gen AI being such a big player in the space at the moment. So lots of conversations, obviously basically every conversation was around Gen AI. As you can imagine. So very, very great, very grateful to hear your feedback around what your perspective was. So thanks for that.
That's okay. And that badge isn't possible without this community, right? Which is why it all comes back to this community. But no, thank you for that.
Yeah, and that's where our seeking engagement team constantly try to bring the diverse voices, give the platform to share the experiences. With your perspective on the growth and leadership, George, what advice you give industry leaders to ensure the diverse voices not only included, but also truly empowered and heard in the streaming media? Because recruitment is one, but empowering them, giving them stage to share their knowledge at the various events is also important.
Yeah, I think it's quite probably a deeply personal question to some of those leaders, I guess, that we're referencing in relation to that, right? And I think it comes back to the previous point around not just doing what's easy as a company. I think it is what it really, really comes down to, because these people at these companies always have this black book of 20, 30 people that they've worked with for 5, 10 years, or they worked with at a previous company, right? But how you really, I guess, challenge the status quo is by saying, I'm actually going to do something that's maybe a bit more difficult here for me in the business in terms of allowing doing something harder, going to a wider network, reaching out to more people, right? I think that's super, super important to do and not just kind of stick with the same old faces and same old names that obviously I spoke about. Now, in relation to your question and maybe around empowering and bringing forward, right? Now, I always have a good saying it within kind of day-to-day work, which is do the job that you want to get promoted to before you get promoted to it. Now, what I mean by that is that that then puts it in your own hands because you're then taking the initiative to show the person above you your capabilities and what you can do. And usually that ends up with that individual going, they're really good at that. Why don't we look to move them forward? Why don't we look to empower them? So that's not necessarily easy, and that's why communities are super important to that, to create that belonging, right? But I always advise people off their own back to take that initiative and take that jump themselves and almost show the kind of figure above you that you're looking for the empowerment from, right? Do the job before you get the job, definitely, right? I always tell people that, you know, to get that empowerment from the people above you, you need to almost show them as a trial period in terms of what you can do, right? And that's across everybody, right? It's the same for me. I personally did that within my team. Before I was promoted to head up 5V Video, I just ran 5V Video for a few months and I showed my boss, this is what I can do, right? And then he empowered me as such to do it. So we can, I guess my point is don't sit there and wait, right? My point is take the initiative and take the jump yourself, because usually when that happens, you end up proving yourself right and the person in which you're searching for empowerment right as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I really love that, Josh. I think too, what I've seen, I've been in the industry for 34 years now, and it amazes me how companies allow what you've just mentioned. You know, a company could go out of business, but then you'll have a leader that goes to a new company, and they'll bring all of those people
It's
from the
easy.
former business over into all of the roles, and nobody says anything. And I've also seen people level up and do the job and still get looked over because, you know, people don't have to be vetted properly. They just, you know, I know this VP now, or I know this new revenue leader, or I know this new head of product now. And it just is crazy to me how diversity is not as prevalent these days because of things like that. And no one says no. Like, you know, no one says no. You can't hire 5 of your buddies without making them go through the proper interview process, without making them go through the proper, you know, requirements process. And I've seen a lot of situations where there are people being moved into positions that are don't I mean, and I'm not saying that everyone has to have a degree or everyone has to have the same skill set, but literally people that never had any experience doing this, came from a completely different industry, don't have anywhere near the experience of the men or women that would be in that role, but they're getting VP positions, you know, at 24, 25 years old. You know, by the time they're 30, they're running the company. And I said all that to say, you know, with your role, how do you suggest addressing those things when they happen? Because it's very difficult to, you know, it's very easy to be blackballed, you know, when you start speaking up against things like that.
Yeah, you're right. It's very easy to go, you know, considering my job is fulfilling customer job vacancies, right? It's very easy to go, okay, you got 10 of your mates. No worries, let's do it, right? And that's, I guess, the point I mentioned earlier. That's the easy route. Now, it comes back to my point around diversity fueling innovation, I think here, Alicia, right? For me, because when I'm speaking to my clients in this nature, and obviously the situation you've mentioned has obviously arisen many times over the years, for me and for my customers as well. You left that previous business for a reason. That previous business maybe didn't do well for a reason. So what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result, right? So unless you in your new business when you're moving into this want to open your eyes and look for some fresh perspectives that are actually going to drive different innovation to therefore drive a different and more effective result for you, you're going to end up in the same situation you were in at your previous company X 6 months ago when you wanted to leave anyway. And that's usually along the lines of terms of the conversation I would have with a leader around that. And I guess to amplify the point as well, could I maybe have done that when I first started my career and felt like I had the belonging or I had the power to do that? Probably not. But now I do, and that's why it's important now in the role that I am and have and the experience I have is actually challenging this people. And one thing I would say on challenges is that some people are sometimes afraid to challenge, and I get it, and rightly so, right? Of course, there is a situation where that can backfire, but there is a situation also where it makes that leader or makes that person really step back and go, wow, okay. Like, I'm super impressed with that perspective. And, I'm super impressed that they've actually just had, the willingness to challenge me, because usually these individuals aren't challenged very much. So they always go with the norm, right? But when they actually are challenged, there's usually an element of respect to that people kind of recognize and listen to that opinion. So for me, it's all about challenging. That kind of is the long and short of it.
That's a great answer. And I think Olga also has a question. Olga, please go ahead.
Hi, Josh. So here's a question. You're obviously talking currently to a group of women who are very much, I'm going to say to some extent, fully agree, like the proper audience. We fully agree with the message you're trying to get across. We are fully on board, blah, blah, blah. But we are trying to fight the industry, the patriarchy, if you will. And I guess my experience with, having been interrupted, talked down to, having had completely inappropriate sexual comments thrown in my direction, is the moment as a woman I start defending myself, I'm being told I'm too sensitive and whatnot. But if a man turns around at this point and says, you got to stop this, cut this out, you interrupted her, you're being rude, blah, 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 that message is received differently, because I guess the person making the inappropriate, rude, derogatory, interruptive comments is, I guess, trying to get himself seen better to the crowd of men that he's talking to. So I guess my question is, we're all on board with your messaging, but has this topic, this conversation ever been brought to any sort of a male audience, and how do they receive it?
That's a great question. That is a really, really good question. Have I done a talk like this to a load of males? No. But have I, on a day-to-day basis with customer interactions, had conversations along this topic? Definitely so. Has that been with CEOs of businesses in this sector? Definitely so. And usually there is an element, there's definitely reception to it. Now, how much of that, I guess your point, Olga, and I agree with you, first of all, right, is them going, yeah, okay, Josh, right? I think that's the important bit of understanding, is there actually substance when someone's looking at me and saying, I agree with you, which I completely get. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not in terms of how they're feeling, right? But, I guess in terms of the points that you mentioned, it's actually why I think, myself as a male has the ultimate responsibility with it, because unfortunately currently the situation we are in is the situation you've referenced. So that means that it takes advocates, allies, leaders within these communities who are actually willing to step up against these individuals from a male perspective. And as I mentioned previously, kind of challenge the status quo with that. I guess alongside that, when looking kind of kind of a solely women community, power is in mass. So, one person saying something is very different to 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So I guess that's where it comes back to kind of the community side of things but most importantly, it's about males in this industry actually having the willingness in owners to go, this isn't right. I'm going to challenge this. And you're completely right. That will not change until there is more men advocates in this industry who are willing to propel that message. You are completely right about that.
Yeah, because I'm curious how we make this happen, because I'm 100% sure the person who, used derogatory comments in my direction has zero respect for me. So I can scream at the top of my lungs and say whatever I want to say, but they will never, ever, ever hear me. My opinion, maybe not 100% correct, but my opinion is that they're trying to show off to the male population, and only the male population can shut that down. But how do we get that message across? How do we, because I mean, there's out of all of us, even if we all stood and yelled at this guy and said, this is inappropriate, you can't talk to her like this, I don't know if that message would be heard by somebody who is blatantly disrespecting a woman standing in front of him. But I feel like your voice, and I know a lot of men who, you know, we do the women in streaming media is very good about having these calls once a month with a whole number of allies. But how do we get the male voices heard to a male audience, is I guess my current, I don't know, goal in life, if you will.
I think the advocates and the allies and people that have been involved with this community have an individual responsibility to champion it and actually create communities within them that are actually going to start to bring this forward. Is there a world in which I'd love to be having this same conversation with numerous men on a webinar? Yes, there is. But I think that can only happen when the men within these communities who have taken the kind of initiative to be a part of this, and rightly so, are actually then willing to champion within the industry. And actually, it only really becomes real critical mass when they start to create community within it, right? When they start to create community is when you start to get that critical mass of a voice that is really able to come back within this kind of topic and what you're mentioning right now. Because you're right, Josh from 5e Video can't solve everything. But Josh from 5e Video alongside a community of 50 to 100 men probably have a good go at solving a lot of problems. So for me, it's mostly about the individuals that are involved in these initiatives championing it and actually creating communities within that are going to push back in relation to this. But I completely agree with you. We're nowhere near where we need to be in relation to that yet.
Thank you.
Such a great question, Olga, and great answer, Josh, because this is the reason we bring the Ally of the Month every month, bringing one industry leader so that the others who are in their team can lead with the example. And a lot of time I get this question, like, why don't you call the women as an ally of the month? And I'm like, we are speaking for each other. We know the problem. And it's not about just you and me talking, but we need the more male to talk, stand up and talk about this. It's not about two women talking to each other or few women talking to each other. And that's where we are trying to kind of, create the difference. Coming back to the trends, like, have you noticed any skill or qualities companies prioritizing when hiring in 2025? Or do you see any global trend or any local trends which are prioritizing in the EMEA region or any particular region?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the elements around communication and people skills is pretty agnostic globally. And, to give an example of that, there's an industry leading company within the streaming sector that actually conducts live coding assessments as their final interviews for software developers. Now, they do not care what line of code is on that. That whole assessment is related to how that individual communicates with the interviewers throughout the entire assessment. And that is the final checkpoint for an industry leader in terms of whether they hire software developers, let alone commercial roles, let alone anything, project management, architecture, whatever it may be, right? But if the kind of core element of what people are looking for is so fundamentally orientated towards communication and people skills at a developer level, then that's only amplified in every other roles in which I'm seeing within the industry at the moment. I think in general, I'm seeing a real mix still between, well, I'd say a bit of a drop, but there's still quite a mix between kind of hybrid and fully remote across the world at the moment. There's obviously less than COVID when it comes to kind of working fully remotely, but there is still a lot of businesses that do still operate fully remotely. And that can also be a part of this problem that we're speaking about today, because when you've got individuals working remotely, there's no networking, there's no community, there's no shared goal with that. And that means that these types of, I guess, issues when it comes to representation are very easy to stay unnoticed, right? Is what I'd see as well. Now, I guess trends wise, I'm seeing kind of more people than I would expect working remotely is number one. Number two is the essence of communication and people skills being the number one requirement within kind of job requisitions at the moment across the field within any role, commercial or technical, no matter what the region. And I guess to be maybe region specific within that, I'm seeing that a lot of people are hiring within Europe at the moment, salespeople that actually are going to be focused on opening up US expansion opportunities for them. That is a big request that I'm seeing at the moment across IBC, across my customer base over the past 5 to 6 months. A lot of European businesses are going to seem as though they're going to make a go at trying to crack America. And it means that there's actually quite a lot of opportunities at the moment for individuals who say they've had experience working with American companies, who want to take a look at taking a sales role in UK, Europe, or wherever it may be in relation to that. So there's a lot of people hiring for sales roles. A lot of it is focused on US expansion. People skills is number one by an absolute mile. And there's a lot more remote working actually still going on than maybe you would expect.
It is excellent to see, and it's always good to see, like, organizations recruiting more people and industries growing compared to, past couple of years.
Yeah.
We love your insights and, the slides you show. I have a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, last question I want to ask, as a global recruiter, if you want to advise, what are the top 3 pieces of career advice for the women in streaming media who want to grow in the leadership role and thrive in this industry?
Great final question. Number one, you need to be a part of a community, because it's not easy to get hold of the people you want to get hold to within this industry. And that's whoever, right? So first of all, you need a community, because you need belonging, and community will also give you easy access to senior stakeholders at businesses that really you want to speak to within a safe space. That is fundamentally number one. Now, number two, as I've mentioned, is around the ability to communicate. Now, not everybody can do that naturally. That sometimes is a skill people need to learn over time. It's sometimes a skill you need to train yourself on. And it's always a bit of a difficult one, because the first step in relation to communication or putting yourself out there is always the hardest. But we need to find a way in which, I would advise the women in streaming media community to really think about ways in which, whether that be through initiatives with women in streaming media, right? Or whether that be initiatives within their own companies, do something which takes you out of your comfort zone when it comes to communicating and networking. Like Janine, be on a panel, right? Wherever it may be, but do something that is actually taking yourself out of the normal and taking yourself out of the comfort zone when it comes to that. And I guess probably the final one, and obviously I referenced to it earlier, is proving you can do something before you're asked to do it, right? It's super, super important at the moment. The dream world of me sat at my desk right now and my CEO coming over to me and offering me the managing director position, it's a dream, right? But if I turned around to him and acted as though a managing director for the next 4, 5, 6 months and went, Tom, our CEO, I think I should be managing director based on this work that I've done over that period. That's going to give your best chance in terms of propelling yourself upwards within the leadership chain at the moment. So those would be my 3 pieces of advice.
Excellent. I think, you have covered a lot of things in whatever the short time we have got. I think, thank you so much for your support. And as we wrap this insightful session, I want to really say a big thank to Josh for sharing highlights of the IVC recruitment and your valuable experience with us. Like, building a supportive network for women in streaming media is just not beneficial for women or enhancing the diversity, but I think it's essential for the overall as an industry, because audience want content or services that reflects their world, and their world is diverse, and a diverse team is essential to make that happen. So I really appreciate your efforts, Josh, to promote the diversity and sharing your experience with us. As we conclude, we can carry forward the energy and inspiration from this conversation. Thank you so much who has joined us on call today. And let's ensure that this conversation continues to encourage more allies to join us. For more discussions, collaborations, Josh has already shared his email address with you. And you can also connect with him on LinkedIn. You can also email us at allyship@womeninstreamingmedia.org. Let's stay connected by following us on LinkedIn or signing up on Women in Streaming Media website. We have an exclusive newsletter which has all the upcoming events and details, which is shared with our members every month. Your feedback is important to us. Let us know what you liked, where we can improve, and how we can become a better as a community. So thank you again, Josh, and everyone join on this call. And let's wait to hear from another awesome ally in the next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.